The 26 symbols your eyes are decoding right now, once broken empire of secrets. You are doing something this very second that almost no human could do for most of our history. You are reading. You glance at a row of little shapes and meaning pours straight into your mind. It feels like nothing. It feels free. It was not always free. For thousands of years, the power to do exactly what you are doing now was locked inside a tiny priestly class, guarded like gold, hidden on purpose. Because writing did not begin as a way to share knowledge, it began as a way to hoard it. The first scripts on Earth had hundreds of signs. Mastering them took most of a lifetime. To read was to hold power, and the people who held it had no reason to give it away. So how did we get here? How did writing escape the temple and end up in your hands on your screen, costing you nothing? The answer begins in a desert, at the bottom of a mine, with a few exhausted workers who were never supposed to write a single word. This is the story of the most quietly radical invention in human history, and how the alphabet stole fire from the gods. To feel how radical the alphabet was, you have to meet what came before it. Go back 5,000 years to the first great writing systems on Earth. In Mesopotamia, they pressed wedge-shaped marks into wet clay, a script we call cuneiform. In Egypt, they carved hieroglyphs into stone, little pictures of owls and reeds in water. Both systems had a problem hiding inside their beauty. They were enormous. Hundreds of distinct signs, some standing for whole words, some for syllables, some for sounds, all tangled together. You did not just pick this up. To truly read and write, you trained for years, often from childhood, inside a school attached to a temple or a palace. The few who made it through had a title. In Egypt, the scribe. And the scribe was not just a clerk. He was a tax counter, a priest's right hand, a man who stood near the throne. There is an old Egyptian text where a father tells his son, "Be a scribe, it saves you from labor. It makes you the one who gives orders." Sit with that. Reading was not a skill, it was a wall. On one side, a handful of insiders who could touch the records, the laws, the prayers, the will of the gods. On the other side, everybody else. And walls like that do not fall on their own. So who knocked the first hole in this one? Not a king, not a priest, someone far lower down. Around 1800 BCE, in the deserts of the Sinai Peninsula, the Egyptians were running mines. They were digging for turquoise, that blue-green stone they loved, at a windswept site we now call Sarabit el-Khadim. Mining is brutal work, so the Egyptians did what empires always do. They brought in laborers from the edges, Semitic-speaking people from the lands to the northeast, the world of Canaan. Picture them, far from home, deep in the rock, sweating under an Egyptian foreman. All around them on the cliffs and shrines were hieroglyphs, the proud writing of their bosses, the writing of gods and kings. They could see it everywhere, but they could not read it. It was not theirs and was never meant to be. And here is where something extraordinary happens. These workers did not learn the Egyptian system. They stole pieces of it. They looked at a hieroglyph, the picture of a house, and in their own language the word for house began with a certain sound. So they took the picture of the house and used it to mean just that sound. Not the word, not the idea, the sound. It is one of the most quietly brilliant leaps any human has ever made, and it changes everything. Let me show you why. Here is the whole secret of the alphabet, the single idea those mine workers landed on. A hieroglyph usually stood for a thing or a whole word. Picture of a sun means sun. That is why you needed hundreds of them, because there are hundreds of things to name. But human speech in any language is built from a shockingly small number of basic sounds. A couple dozen, maybe. The same handful of consonants, recombined endlessly into every word you will ever say. So the workers asked something the priests never had to. What if a symbol does not stand for a thing, but for a sound? Take the picture of an ox head. In their language, the word for ox started with a catch in the throat they wrote as aleph. So the ox head no longer meant ox. It meant the sound at the start of ox. Take the house and it means the B sound. Take wavy lines for water and they mean M. And once you do that, the whole monstrous library of signs collapses. You no longer need a symbol for every word. You need about 22. Roughly 22 little marks, and with them you can spell anything anyone can say. We call this early system Proto-Sinaitic, the first alphabet, scratched onto rock by people whose names we will never know. Look at those wavy lines for water. The letter M, now look at the M in this very sentence. It is the same idea. Nearly 4,000 years later, you are still using their trick. But a trick scratched in a desert mine is not yet a revolution. For that, it needed to travel. The alphabet did not spread because a king commanded it. It spread because it was useful, and because the right people got their hands on it. Those people were the Phoenicians. Picture a narrow strip of coast on the eastern Mediterranean, cities like Tyre and Sidon and Byblos, hemmed in by mountains with almost nowhere to farm. So the Phoenicians turned to the sea. They became the great traders of the ancient world, dealing in timber, in glass, in a precious purple dye, setting up trading posts from one end of the Mediterranean to the other. And traders have a problem priests do not. They need to write fast. A merchant tracking cargo and debts across a dozen ports cannot stop to carve a temple wall. He needs something quick, portable, something he can teach a junior partner before the next ship leaves. The compact little alphabet was perfect. So the Phoenicians refined it and carried it in their ships alongside the cargo, port to port, deal to deal, across the whole sea. Notice what just happened. Writing left the temple. For the first time, the technology of writing was traveling in the hands of businessmen, not priests, spread by profit instead of guarded by prayer. The monopoly was cracking, and the next people to receive this gift would turn a merchant's tool into a machine for thought. When the alphabet reached the Greeks, around the 8th or 9th century BCE, it was missing something. The Phoenician alphabet, like its Semitic parents, wrote mostly consonants. The vowels, the open sounds, the E, I, O, U, were largely left out, filled in by a reader who already knew the language. That works for a Semitic tongue. For Greek, it was clumsy. Greek leans hard on its vowels. Leave them out and the words blur. So the Greeks did something simple and profound. They took a few Phoenician letters for consonant sounds their own language did not use and repurposed them to stand for vowels. A Phoenician letter called aleph, that catch in the throat, became the Greek alpha. The vowel A, a letter called he, became E, and just like that, Greek had a full set of vowels standing beside its consonants. This is the first complete alphabet in the sense you know it, a symbol for every sound, consonant, and vowel alike. So complete that you can write down a language you do not even speak, sound it out letter by letter, and say the words. And those first two letters, alpha and beta, were eventually pushed together into a single name for the whole system: alphabet. You say their invention every time you name the thing. Now the tool was finished. About 24 signs, every sound captured, learnable not in a lifetime but in days, which raises the real question: what happens to a society when anyone can learn to read? Here is what happens when you take the lock off writing. Everything changes, and not gently. Remember the old bargain. To read was to belong to a tiny class who trained for years. Knowledge moved through that bottleneck, and whoever controlled the bottleneck controlled the truth, the law, and the word of the gods. Now collapse the years of training into a few days. Suddenly writing is not a priesthood. It is a skill a merchant, a soldier, a farmer's clever child could pick up. And look at what the early alphabetic peoples actually do with it. The Greeks write down their laws and post them in public, where any citizen can read them. So the law is no longer whatever a magistrate says it is. They write their poems, their plays, their philosophy, an explosion of writing by people who would never have made it through a scribal school. And think about scripture. A holy book that only a priestly elite can read keeps its followers dependent on that elite. A text written in a simple alphabet can be put, in principle, into many more hands. The sacred stops being a secret. This is the quiet revolution. Not a battle, not a decree. Just a tool so easy that the wall around knowledge stopped making sense. Law you can check. Scripture you can read. Ideas you can argue with because you can finally see them. But every disruption has a loser, and it is time to say plainly who lost when you won. The loser was the oldest power in the ancient world, the monopoly on knowing. For 3,000 years before the alphabet, the deal had held. A scribal and priestly class stood between ordinary people and the written word, and through that gate flowed everything that mattered. Who owed what, who owned what the king commanded, what the gods demanded. To control writing was to control the record of reality itself. The alphabet did not ask that class for permission. It simply made them optional. This is why it is fair to call the alphabet a power disruption. Not because anyone marched on a temple, but because a technology quietly removed the reason its gatekeepers existed. When a skill that took a lifetime can suddenly be learned in days, the people whose power came from that skill do not get overthrown. They just stop being necessary. And notice who pulled it off. Not an emperor with an army, not a lone genius. It was Semitic laborers in a desert mine who borrowed a few pictures. It was merchants who wanted faster bookkeeping. It was Greeks who needed their vowels. Ordinary people, solving ordinary problems, who never set out to change the world, and changed it more completely than any conqueror. That is the strange shape of this revolution. The most powerful information technology before the printing press was not handed down from on high. It bubbled up from below, from the very people the old system was built to keep out. Every empire of secrets rests on one thing, that the secrets stay hard to read. Make them easy and the empire does not fall in battle. It simply dissolves. So look down again, at the symbols carrying this sentence into your mind. There are 26 of them in English, and you mastered the whole set as a small child, probably singing them. They felt like the most ordinary thing in the world. They are not. That M in the middle of a word is a memory of wavy water lines scratched by a worker in an Egyptian mine, nearly 4,000 years ago. A worker who was never meant to write. The you read 100 times a day is an ox head a Greek turned and filled with breath. The very word alphabet is 2 of their letters, still holding hands. You were handed all of it for free, in a quiet classroom, as if it were nothing. But it was the end of a war you never knew was fought, a war over who is allowed to know. And the side that won that war, 3,800 years ago, was your side. The letters you are reading are not just letters. They are an old act of rebellion, still going, still in your hands. And it makes you wonder what else around you, plain and obvious and free, is really a revolution that someone already won on your behalf, before you were ever born. That's what this channel is for. I'm glad you're here and I'll see you next time.